Hey everybody, what if I told you I could teach you how to take this and turn it into this? Oh yeah, would you be interested? Well, my name is Bob and I'm a home brewer. And today I'd like to teach you about how to make a batch of home brew from scratch. We'll talk to you a little bit about the equipment involved, talk to you a little bit about the fermentation process, and we'll talk to you a little bit about how to get that stuff into bottles, which is the part that we all are after. Now, making beer is a lot easier than you think. If you can take a pan full of water, put it on a stove and boil it while following a recipe, you can make awesome beer. Now, the first thing that you're going to need is a basic set of equipment. The basic set of equipment is a 5-gallon pot to boil the beer in, a 6.5-gallon bucket with a lid to ferment the beer, and of course you're going to need a stove. You can obtain the equipment that you need from an online supplier such as morebeer.com, or if you're lucky enough to have a local homebrew shop, I suggest you go down to the local homebrew shop and talk to those guys. They have all the equipment that you need. In addition to that, they have all the advice that'll get you started. And now that we have the basic equipment that we require to make a batch of beer, let's get started making our beer. And the first thing that we're going to need is a kit. In my opinion, kits are the way to go for beginners. They're so easy. You open the kit, it has all the grain that you need, the extract you need, the hops you need, and the yeast that you need. It comes with everything required to make a perfect batch of beer. All you have to do is follow the recipe. So how do we do it? Step one, take the pan, put it on the stove, fill it with water, and turn it on and bring it to a boil. Honestly, it's that easy. Following the recipe, once you get the water to a boil, you'll add the ingredients in at the appropriate times. It's very important that you follow the recipe, otherwise your beer will turn into beer, but it will be weird tasting beer. If you want it to turn out right, you have to follow the recipe. And now that we have our beer made, we have to get it into a bucket so that we can ferment it. So, the first thing we want to do is put the beer into the bucket and get it cooled down to around 68 degrees so that we can put in the yeast that came with the kit. Now, yeast require 68 to 75 degrees. If it's any higher than that, it's going to kill the yeast. If it's any lower than that, it will just sit in suspension and it won't produce beer. So we want to have between 68 and 72 degrees. Put that yeast into your bucket, put your lid on, give it a little shake, and put it away for 2 to 4 weeks. Now, I like to leave the beer in for about 4 weeks because I think that it gives it a better flavor. But according to the Joy of Home Brewing, the first 5 to 14 days is when primary fermentation takes place, and you don't really need to leave it in longer than that if you don't want to. You can bottle it up after that. Well, now that we've waited our time and we've got our beer fermented, how do we get it into bottles? Well, the first thing we want to do is we're going to take the beer, pull it out of the closet and take off the lid. Then we're going to mix in a mixture of water and corn sugar. Now the corn sugar is what makes the yeast reactivate because it's adding new sugar into the bottles. So we're going to take this corn sugar, put it into the beer, put that into the bottles, put caps on it, and put it away for 2 to 4 weeks. Now in that time, the yeast are going to eat the sugar that you added in there, and it's going to create the carbonation, and that's how you get carbonation in beer. Now that you have the carbonation process and you have your beers ready to go, it's been 4 weeks, it's time to plan an event to get rid of that stuff. Now, in conclusion, I told you today about how to make a batch of beer, I told you about the equipment involved in making beer, and we talked a little bit about the fermentation process and a little bit about bottling. That was a very basic rundown of how to make a batch of beer. If you're interested in making beer, you can go online to www.youtube.com. There are literally hundreds of videos that go much further into depth than I did today in this briefing. And I encourage every one of you, if you're interested, to go check it out or to ask questions. It's a great hobby to get into. Thanks for your time.